Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to another delightful episode of the one and only Reaction Time podcast. We are here for you to talk about esports, mainly those of the League of Legends variety. Steven is here, Eric is here. Gentlemen, how's the hot Missouri air treating you this evening?
Oh, it sure is hot, and there's a lot of that good old pollen and allergens. I mowed my lawn and I died, and I'm not alive anymore. But I
I
had to
don't
come
have a
back.
lawn.
I have not mowed my lawn in a couple weeks, and I am not looking forward to it. It it's just it's supposed to get over 100 here tomorrow in Iowa, and that's not pleasant, and I'm not looking forward to it. The end. So enough about the weather. Let's talk about the Rift. We are going to focus this week on the champion diversity mainly that we have seen across regions, and I think dig in a little bit in some places to what we've seen from some players in some places on specific champions, because there are some interesting things going on that are very different between West and East. I think as much as anything, and some unique meta picks depending on the region. So let's dig in. We're going to start from the top and work our way down like we've done in previous episodes where we've looked at this. It's a good. I think we're 3 weeks into some global seasons and 2 weeks into others, so it's a good kind of stable point to check what we're seeing. And I think we'll be playing on a new patch this weekend in most places, if I remember right. The timing should be about right for the game to move to 11:12 while the live game moves to 11:13. I think. Could be talking out of my ass, but um, so just to see where stuff is at right now. So we'll start in top lane. Um, it, it's it's pretty much the Lee Sin and Gwen show. Looking at the top four regions, Lee is still there from MSI. Gwen obviously was disabled at MSI, but is now all the rage, all the hotness, and has looked pretty busted depending on who's playing her. There have been a lot of notable hard carry performances across the four regions. Steven, I'm going to start with you. What was your favorite Gwen game you saw?
Oh, I saw Licorice not do like splendid on Gwen, but then like do okay. I believe that's the game I'm thinking of. Um, but it's definitely a champion that it showcases like if if you're comfortable on her, you can do some fun stuff and then just like do really aggressive trades that you don't win at first, but then you just keep scissoring their timbers and
It was terrible. Get out.
There's no pirate skin yet. You have to wait for the
Yes,
pirate skin on that
that's
one.
they've got to do that.
but yeah, an aggressive AP fighter. I- Is she a split pusher? Does she fit that? Or just a duelist kind of?
It kind of fits what's going to happen with, I don't know, have you seen the new split pushy items on the PBE that are coming in?
Yeah, yeah.
Is they both seem really good, and she seems like she's gonna love the Nemesis one, but everybody's gonna love that one because its numbers are really good. But she can certainly split push, and the fact that she does build a lot of the attack speed, and so what she does means she clears turrets relatively well for an AP champion. There's a lot of looking through the builds here, a lot of Nashor's Tooth, second, third item. So there's AP going into attack into um base attack damage, and that lets you be able to split push. He's a good duelist. There's good outplay potential, so it does seem like in a meta that could move more towards split push, he could still be very good. Um,
Yeah,
Eric, what was your favorite Gwen game you saw?
Flandre.
Thank you for saying what I knew you were gonna say.
Yeah, so Flandre on EDG had a sick Gwen game, uh, and some other sick games too. Um, yeah, like I would say split push, and but like the big thing is you play with split pushers differently currently. We'll see if it changes a bit with the items, where you split push by exerting map pressure, going towards their turret, and then going into the enemy jungle, and then killing their jungler on their way to Ward Dragon. That's what you do as a split pusher in this meta. You invade for vision so that you win the next dragon fight. It's not about taking turrets. It's about map control. So, like, and Gwen's great for these like ridiculous nonsense jungle fights.
Yeah. So can I ask a question before David, you go into your point? So Gwen has an 81% presence, which is like the top champion of summer, and then really close behind is Renekton. So with that matchup, is it just the split pushing advantage that's making her a priority then over Renekton?
So the only reason Renekton's like that super high is partially because he's a lane answer to Gwen that people feel comfortable playing. Like it's not actually necessarily that he's super good. It's that like these nonsense flex picks are not good against the Gator. And so then you pick the Gator to like or people ban the Gator because like they're 3 through 4 in pick priority
Well,
are all
and
things that are bad against it in lane phase.
and that's part of the thing, right? The Renekton prio in top 4 is 92%, but it's 15 picks to 101 bans. It's just not getting through. As opposed to like Gwen and Lee each have over 30 picks and like bans about half the time, both right at 67% presence in the top 4 leagues. So like the Renekton's presence is super duper high because it likes these match. Like I think it likes both the Lee Sin and the Gwen matches. I think it's good into Lee too, from what I remember.
Yeah,
So it's
it
getting
breaks
banned.
shields.
It's getting banned all the time, but because it's good into Lee and Gwen. So if Lee and Gwen fall off, then Renekton might not be as interesting of a pick, even though it's still pretty good. Renekton also flexes, which we've seen Lee mid. It hasn't been as much the hotness. I'm not sure we've seen Gwen mid much.
No.
I don't think, looking through the players here, I don't think we've seen it probably at all. So
Three picks. So
so
not at all.
much. Yeah. So like Renekton and Lee both can flex, which is a notable thing in this meta. You have picks that can flex. You have the Gwen, you have the Lee, you have the other Riftmaker abuser, Akali, who only 6 games in top lane of the meta, but it turns out is really strong when you pick her and put her somewhere.
Which makes me big sad. We'll talk about that later, I'm sure.
No, it. There have been some nutty Akali performances across these games too.
Yeah.
You seem mad, bro. I can't imagine why you're mad.
I'm a little upsetty. I will say that.
Man, did you get styled on by Jizuke? Boy,
I didn't. I wasn't there. I wouldn't
you're wearing the
meme
hat.
tele.
You're wearing the hat, bro. You're wearing the hat. You personally.
I wouldn't try to meme teleport. And I'll tell you what.
Anyway, I would like to note, before we move too far away from Gwen, Eric, which Flandre hard carry Gwen performance was your favorite? Because he's had 2. Was it
one
the
of them the
IG
rare...
game or the Rare Atom game?
It was the Rare Atom one. Partially because like both of the Rare Atom games were just like Flandre, you know, having like over 80% of his team's kills and taking like every turret on the map by himself, which is always like, oh man, that's some flashbacks right there. It turns out EDG might not even need Viper to be like league MVP potential like this split. They could actually have multiple lanes carrying them. What is this? Scouts back in meta too? Like this team just got even scarier because now they have 3 carry lanes that they can play with in this meta. And they're all back on comfort picks. No more tank Flandre. Give me assassin Flandre. Give me top Azir Flandre. Let me see the spice.
So my 2 picks are both from NA because they share something in common, and I think it's funny. So Someday 7-1-5 and Fudge 6-0-3, both in games against Dignitas, who chose not to ban the champion and may reconsider that in the future because Fake God did not have a good time laning into this champion the 2 games that it got through against him, and that's unfortunate for him. A sad day.
He didn't get to play Rumble either of those, right? Because I think Rumble's his Gwen answer, And so the thing that always happens with Dignitas is that
He did play Rumble in
in
the
in
100
the
Thieves game. He went
okay and
2-5.
got wrecked.
Yep.
Yeah, like the thing about Dignitas, even into like last split and playoffs, is that like they have some big egos with that Dardoch energy, and so they'll pick what they think is good. Results be damned, meta be damned, fans be damned. They're gonna play their shit, and so like we can see it already in effect this split as they're Flex and Rumble. They're 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 playing weird stuff.
The answer, the second game is another champion that we should talk about among these fluxes here, and the new presence is our other new friend Viego, who was Fake God's answer to Gwen in the second game, which also got dumpstered, which is funny because in 12
Yeah.
games across the top four regions, Viego top is 8-4. So it's looked pretty decent up there. It's looked pretty decent in the mid lane, depending on the comp. There have been a couple of frustrating games of Viego. Steven, how did you feel about Jensen's Viego?
Vega Jensen doesn't play assassins very well anymore. I don't know what's up. Like Viego is like a DPS
It's an
assassin,
interesting one to
right?
play though, right?
Yeah.
Like I think of the team fight in mid where he hard all ins to get who's EG's support? I'm blanking.
Ignar.
Ignore.
He hard all ins for
He
Ignar.
hard all in to get Ignar. Got Ignar down to like 50 health, and if he gets that reset and his Leona gets the health back, I think TL wins that fight comfortably.
Yeah, they
But
do.
it's a different, like Viego is a different assassin playstyle than I think basically anything else in the pool, and you do have to like really hard all in to get those resets cooking from what it seems. It's almost like think of it like a
Katarina.
jinx or something, right?
I
Like
feel like it's very akin to Katarina, where like
yeah,
when you can like you either completely
when you
wipe
get one,
the
it goes.
yeah, and I don't. So this is me reading a lot into a human being that plays a video game for a profession. Jensen's playing real scared and has been for about a year now, and I don't know if Viego is something he was not comfortable on or that like all in assassin playstyle is something he's comfortable on, but like I question a lot of the decision making that that champion and that player combined does. So
So my biggest spicy take with what we've seen so far this week is that the meta is shaped by picking champions that throw people out of their comfort zone. Like like people pick the Akali again up, and in addition to getting the Riftmaker spikes, people are like, wait, there's a giant cloud there. Where'd she go? How
what
do
the
we
hell
team
do I
fight? They
do?
like their hands fly off their keyboard, they spin around 3 times, and then they all are dead. And it feels like this is the running theme of like people pick these champions that specifically warp how team fights function. Teams get like completely thrown by this new presence and don't figure it out like within a week of practice. And then by next week they're ready. Because like Viego week one in LCS and internationally, I saw like massively successful with getting those resets. And then in that EG fight that you mentioned, it's not just that Jensen all ins and almost gets the kill. It's that EG like hard focuses Viego out in that fight. Like he becomes visible. Everyone throws all their damage at Viego. They like ignore the enemy team completely for that kill. And you see that like in the LEC games with Leader too, where like he hard all ins on Viego. He's like 4-0, and then the enemy team is just like, oh hell no, and then they just focus all their damage on the Viego, take him out of the fight. And after Viego's out, these team fight comps like don't function the same way, and then you see them like start feeling the lack of damage. And so it's really interesting, and I think that we'll see that with other picks too, not just the Viego. Maybe Akali will stick around more because she's busted, but like some of these other picks, people are going to figure out how to play around them, and then maybe add in new picks that also warp how you play team fights. And that's a great way to take advantage of the fact that players are so focused on macro for prepping for dragon fights and team fighting that these champions that change how team fights function are very powerful in getting teams off of their comfort zone in the game.
And with Viego, there's still clearly a learning curve for everybody involved here because we've seen great players really struggle on the pick. Like the one that comes to my mind is a series I watched yesterday, Damwon losing 2-0 to KT, kind of out of the blue. Canyon acknowledges the best jungler in the world, whips out the jungle Viego. Not common, but something you can do, and has the same problems in team fights with not being able to get the resets, not being able to get the right positioning, and is part of why that game went so badly for Damwon. And same for like Caps, right? We've seen Caps play great games in the Schalke game, just couldn't find the right positioning, couldn't find the right team fight play. Where you have players that maybe are less respected across the general thing, like the top laner of Nongshim Red Force, Rich, who's I have more to say about later. Absolutely popping off on this pick in top lane, 509 in a victory over Sandbox. And like it's still there's a people are at very different stages on the learning curve, clearly, for a champion that's being played in 3 different roles. And it's 3 different roles. It's Eric and I talked about another night when we were prepping on this. It's so many different build paths right now. Sunderer is all the hotness, but Sunderer has gotten nerfed. We've seen all 3 of the ADC mythics get built on it. We've seen I think we've seen at least one of the lethality mythics get tried on it. There's a stride breaker back in here. Like there's so much learning, both theory crafting for the builds and gameplay style, that this is going to keep evolving. And as long as it's functional, like if it's good enough to get into the pro game, it's going to get in there somewhere. But watching how people learn and adapt how it's being played, I think is going to be one of the most interesting things of this summer split, because I don't think it's going to go anywhere, but it's clearly not optimized yet.
And just comfortability on the champion.
Yeah,
It's just like
like,
another
it's
layer.
a new
There's so many
champion,
things. The
right?
2 new
Like-
champions being available at the same time is pretty wild.
And you would think, just with the champion design, that it will come to favor players with deeper champion pools, because you have to know how to play the champions you take over if you do get those resets. So, like, that's always been one of the things about it, is it favors people with wider bases of knowledge with more games, which probably won't impact any pro players, but there'll be times we've seen with Rumble recently, a lot, who we're going to talk about next, that junglers don't know how to play Rumble very well. So, like, that's a concern with things, is do you know how to play? Like, if there's some weird pick taken out on the enemy team. Which, unless either of you have any more top laners you'd like to acknowledge, seems like a good time to transition to the jungle discussion. So Rumble's still there.
Yes.
People are still kind of bad at him. Udyr's still there. He still seems kind of broken.
I have a theory, a game theory. Any champion that has a weird management point is really strong in the right hand. So Viego, you have to manage like ulting in, all inning, understanding that. Gwen has a whole bunch of mechanics to understand in her own kit. Rumble has heat management and it functions well. So when people look bad on Rumble in the jungle, even though he does his job well in the jungle, if they don't know how to manage their heat and do what Rumble is supposed to do, they don't look as good. And so that, like, there's champions that you just cannot pick up and play, like Udyr, which does not have that like nuanced management of their own unique niche skill tree like thing. And so that's why Udyr is going to stick around, because he does his job very, very well, and you don't have some cockamamie thing you have to manage on top of that. And that was my game theory, but it was just a theory.
I mean, that fits in pretty well with some of the stuff we've talked about, where who looks good on these. It's very obvious too, because, like, you know, in LCS. It's Dardoch, and it's Xerxes, the OG Jungle Rumble, who know what they're doing, and who look good on this champion. Kind of go like in addition to that though, there still are always tiers, right? So like as a casual observer, especially if you're not using ProView, the only way you can tell that junglers are mismanaging their heat is when Freak like literally tells you in the game, which he has done several times this past weekend, and say that they're not doing very good at this and just calls them out on live broadcast. The only like other thing you can see as an observer is like where do they place equalizer, and then how does the team com draft for equalizer and bringing that success. But like even that has tiers. Like in that G2 game that um, where Caps was struggling on Viego, they had a jungle rumble with top set. So Set's also emerged in top lane. We didn't really mention him, only because he combos well with Rumble, because you take their carries and you dunk them onto the red carpet. And then that's a great way of taking out squishies. But they fell kind of behind in these late game fights because of Viego getting caught out early. And then Wonder couldn't dunk people into the equalizer with enough sustainable ways to actually win them fights. And that's like a not just is Wonder doing his job correctly, is Yankos able to ult when he is to actually synchronize these engages. And they were really struggling at that, which is very scary when like we talk about G2 and their odds of uh, re-emerging on top of the league in EU, when like it doesn't seem like they're on the same page for these very high synergy comps, which is what these look like.
The other thing we need to acknowledge with Set is, as with many of these picks that we've been talking about, he is a flex. He has been played competitively in a top 4 region in 4 of the 5 roles this split. He only hasn't been played jungle. It's the only place he hasn't been.
ADC.
No, he has a game that is recorded
What?
as ADC in the Game of Legends file. I assume it was paired with a Senna.
Senna, yeah, like paired with
Like,
Senna.
Fast.
Oh,
Okay.
so like, not really, but
For
it's
meme status, yes.
yeah.
Not in jungle.
If you pull up
Dang.
the set page on Game of Legends, he has games listed in 4 of the 5 roles, except jungle.
That's.
I'm
I
not gonna
guess he
lie,
just
jungle
cannot.
wasn't the one I
He
thought.
just can't clear fast enough. I
So
guess.
it's a super duper flex. The other ones I want to talk about, we talked about Lee in top lane. Lee's been played in jungle. Lee's been played mid lane, and Nocturne, who, fun fact, Nocturne has the second highest ban presence of any champion at all in the top 4 regions right now, because it's a 3-way flex
And he's
between
awesome.
top and jungle and mid, and it's really good. Do you want to know the fun fact about Nocturne in this split so far? He's been banned so much that nobody's played him much, except for one player, Rascal on Gen G, or right? Am I tripping? Yeah, on Rascal on Gen G has played 7 games of Nocturne this split of his 8 total games this split.
Spooky.
He's played 7 Nocturne games and 1 Gwen game. No one else in the world in the top 4 leagues has played more than 2 games of Nocturne, and only one person's played 2 games of Nocturne. So Rascal is inflating the top lane Nocturne stats. My column.
Isn't he a decent answer into lane Gwen and then like not answering the split push but forcing the fights outside of the split push?
Very good for making picks, yeah.
Yeah.
And like
Especially when it's on like a
from going
Viego or
into-
other assassins.
Yeah, preventing people from going into 1-3-1 and then setting up ways to like be in a side lane and then join dragon fights.
Nocturne's great. I love Nocturne.
A hilarious thing that's happened in at least one LCK game that I watched recently is when there's a Nocturne and a Sylas in the same game, and you can turn off the lights for everybody at the same time. It's really funny.
Panic.
Because I think there was a top Nocturne and a mid Sylas, but when the Sylas got the Nocturne all, like Baron fights with whenever there's a Nocturne involved are very interesting, but when there's 2 Nocturne ults in the game, it's even more interesting. Because nobody can see anything.
It's dark in here.
So Nocturne like needs talked about. He's mostly in the top lane, but he's been played in the jungle and he's been played mid lane. It's all these the flexes. And then we have the pure junglers, of which we have two delightful new ones to talk about. Let's talk about Xin Zhao and Diana. Because boy have neither of them been in the meta for a hot minute. Xin was borderline early in spring, if I remember right. This year, I think, maybe
I
last
don't
year.
recall, but if you say so.
He got played a couple times in the LCS at some point. I'm not making that up.
It's been a while. So
It's-
like
It's been a minute.
So for all these slower clear junglers, they're tied to like a minor patch change where they slowed down respawn timers. So you can play stuff that's not Udyr and feel okay in the game. Not saying that just picking Udyr isn't the best thing to be doing at any given moment, but it does mean that you can be slower in clear speed and then have more opportunities to like have low cost for impacting lanes. So you'll see better ganking junglers show up. Xin Zhao really works primarily as a team fighter because you create this huge zone control when you press your R button. And like people mainly talk about the, poke and dash that they added in, where you get like the super long dash range if you hit like with the tip of the spear on W, as like why people have started playing him more. But I think that's a bit of a red.
11.6 for the
Yeah.
record. So
But I think
like
that's
3
a
months
bit
ago.
of a red herring as far as this goes. The big thing goes into what I was saying about picking champions that change how you approach team fights, because that ultimate completely shuts off an ADCs available to fight in the mosh pit. Where like if you press that Xin Zhao ult button and you have 4 assassin bruisers beating each other up inside of that circle, Tristana or Jinx or Aphelios can't do anything. You have shut off their big damage source from interfering in your melee. And like that's a huge deal for these teams that have gotten used to like Tristana and Jinx resets or like Kai'Sa all-ins as their only ways for team fighting. So now all of a sudden you either have to have a comp that's slower paced where you can back off when they use these ultimates, or you need to opt into more obnoxious tank AD carries who can either fight in the melee or kite it out and be more self-sufficient. And so we've kind of seen both sides of that coin, but like that's a part of why Xin Zhao is so strong, is that AoE ultimate where you just like it's like an AoE wind wall, and it turns out that's very effective at changing up how teams have to approach these fights, even if they have fed members on certain sides of the rift.
He's also a champion that can build Divine Sunderer, which is a notable thing right now because people love Divine Sunderer. He's another one that, like Viego, in boy, this is how many games of Xin Zhao have we seen in the top leagues? We've seen 26 picks, so 26 games thus far, and I can count 5 different mythics that he's built thus far. There are Sunderer games, there are Gore Drinker games, there are Sunfire games, there are Frost, whatever they call
Frost?
Frozen Fist these days,
Yeah.
Frostfire Gauntlet.
Frosty Fister.
And I think I saw one more to make 5 too. So at least 4 then.
If not
So
Eclipse, Eclipse was the one that people had been building before like pro level.
Yep.
So
So it's like there's a lot of, and there hasn't really been a consistent settled thing. It's the last 3 are Gore Drinker games, but then there's a bunch of Sunderer games, and then Santorin built Sunfire in a game, and then GJ built Frozen Fist in a game. That's so in the 9 most recent games, you get all 4 different mythics. It's whatever you need at a given time, which is a nice bit of diversity within champion diversity, right? You can be a tank if you need to be for the game, or you can be more damage focused and more of a hard carry, which we've seen both approaches work. Like Santorin's game, which he won 0-2-4 with Sunfire, was just as effective as Spica 4-0-6 with Sunderer. Like they both achieved wins in different ways.
Something that I don't think we get to see enough are champions that can adapt depending on how certain situations go. Like the old school Xin Zhao, like rework, but old school like mentality is like you can do like a cheddar cheese, like level 2 like scrimmage somewhere, whether it's in a lane or against the enemy jungler. And I think he's one of the few junglers that can like contest crap against an Udyr. If that goes well, keep going, and you get a lot of benefit from building something more aggressive. But if it goes poorly, you can fall back on those tank items and still be really like super valuable of like picking a target, zoning everyone else out, not taking any damage, and just like spearing till the end of time while you burn them with their Sunfire. So that is so incredibly valued at a pro level where like, yeah, you can't exactly predict everything, but it's a safety net, and that's very rare in this game.
Mm-hmm. The other thing that's notable for Xin Zhao to this point is the LCS alone has played almost as many Xin Zhao games as all of the other top 3 regions combined. LCS has played 12 games of Xin, 5, 5, and 4 for the other 3 regions. So he's there, and those numbers are probably going to start to balance out, I assume, because he's kind of there all the time. Where our girl Diana is in a different place. Diana has only been seen to this point in the LCK and LPL, but is priority picking in both leagues. Like, there's been 16 Diana picks. She's right at a 50% win rate as it stands, but it's like it has been effective. There have been some really nuts games on her, and she has been tremendously powerful in terms of another game-changing ultimate ability. Eric, you want to talk a little bit about Diana ult for a bit? It's nuts what it can do in a team fight.
The dragging the team in works, and it a part of what makes Diana so good is that it gives you another role that's less interactive for putting a carry, because Diana's damage is nuts. And so it's you have this AoE ultimate. You have this AoE ultimate that lures in the enemy carries so that you have an AoE burst combo, but also interferes with the frontline stuff, and then also has enough to solo out even from jungle. And this makes it so that your other carry roles have like much less to really worry about with how they approach team fights. She also combos really well, by the way, with the other assassin picks that are really big right now. With Akali, where you could perfect execution through the squishies as they get Diana ulted for like this really massive burst damage. Theoretically, with Rumble, with the equalizer, where you drag them in and then you lay down the carpet. With Viego, just because they have high burst damage and base stats. Like, there's a lot you can do with these champions to really shape what options the enemy team has for how to approach things. She does have a weakness, though, to one of the other meta power picks that we'll talk about like at the very opposite side of the rift.
Yeah, and I think she also plays really well into that synergistic, like all in, to where if a Viego and a Diana both successfully dive in on someone, setting up a Viego or a Gwen or a Rumble, like to just finish the job, that's very powerful. She also has built-in wave clear, which is why someone like a Nocturne is very successful in whatever lanes. I imagine if Diana's doing well in jungle, it's only a matter of time before you can start flexing her around. And she also just can really isolate targets, which seems to be a flavor thing. And furthermore, and how she has a steep learning curve, and if people aren't familiar with her on either side of the matchup as playing her, she'll look really bad or really good, or playing against her, not familiar, she'll look really bad or really good. So it seems to be the common thread is just like we're champions with built-in wave clear, built-in tactics to work synergistically with a team fight, and then also some flexibility on where she or that character may go.
If I may recommend, if you're interested in a Diana game to go watch to catch yourself up on how this all works, LNG winning over JDG is a notable early split LPL result. And they did this in game 1. You know what goes really well with Diana jungle, Steven? Yasuo.
Oh, yucky.
They
Ooh,
played
that makes
Diana
me.
Yasuo in game 1 of this series. Tarzan ends 4-2-10, Icon ends 5-1-14.
Do they feel good about that
They
though? Do
did
they
the
feel okay
Wombo,
about
and it
doing that?
worked. And they
That's
picked the
illegal.
Wombo combo comp, and it worked.
Yeah,
Man,
because you have to hit that approximately one time.
Oh yeah,
Tarzan
no.
Tarzan probably feels so good about like having a comp where he can press the engage button on a carry champion, and all he has to do is say mash R icon when I go in, and then LNG can actually win games. Because like they really struggled late last season when he was the only one on their team who was doing anything on the Rift.
Functional.
We're gonna talk about LNG a little more in a bit. There's some stuff going on there. Um, but yeah, so I am expecting we're going to see Diana in the LCS and LEC probably this weekend because it looks good. And if the players have taken the time to pick it up, it can play really well in the meta right now as it's being shown in the East. So I have a feeling that this is going to start popping up in a couple places. It smells to me like a blabber pick.
Yeah.
That feels like a blabber pick to me.
It really just depends on like this is a little outside of like talking about roles and whatever, but I just something if North America specifically wants to be a participant in international like events at a high level, they have to be quicker to picking up these things because this is truly like, hey, we're reading something. It's one side versus the other. Like NA is defaulting to the easier to pull off safe pick with Inzensao, and then everyone else is like, hey, we're seeing something really really magical with Diana. And it's a higher execution level, but we're seeing success with it. LCS, who I am more invested in personally, I'll speak that bias. You have to be willing to take that risk and invest in early adaptations now, while there's still a lot of games to play in summer.
Also, like NA likes to 5v5 in mid for no reason. Pick a team fight Wombo.
Please do it, cowards.
What could go wrong?
Nothing. You might get benched. But
Eric,
it would have been thought about for a while. We've been thinking about
Eric,
it for
you
a
seemed
while.
like you had one more Diana thought.
Oh well, I just have one other jungler
You
to
you
bring
do?
up,
What are you thinking?
which was the majestical only Fnatic win from their opening Super Week, where Bwipo played jungle Karthus, and like let's talk about champions that are great for Fnatic, where Bwipo or Hilly are supposed to die. This is like a dream scenario. So here's Bwipo on a champion where the enemy team doesn't want to try and kill him because it's very unfortunate. And that was their one win, was when he could press the R button to carry some team fights and had like amazing jungle clear speed because Karthus is really fast. So there's plenty of nonsense you can do right now, especially if the enemy team isn't ready for it. Um, I like the Diana Yasuo Wombo better, but like the Karthus is like, if it can kill camps, if it has an R button, you can play it in League of Legends.
Another player we're going to talk about later is Peanut. I would like to acknowledge Peanut in Italy, showing us that Italy can still do disgusting things when she's allowed to do. Peanut had an absolute hard carry game of Italy in one of Nongshim's wins in a game 3. I think it was in their second series against, would have been against Sandbox, that he was robbed of MVP in, for the record. Absolutely robbed.
Rigged.
But Nidalee can still do Nidalee things. She's another AP jungler. She still is what she is if you've got players that are good enough to do. We've seen her kind of on the fringes of things this whole time. A couple of big games at MSI here and there. So she's still there, but nothing anyway. Anyway, Steven said something about decent execution. How about some perfect execution in the mid lane? Let's talk about the Akali lane. Akali's disgusting.
How about not?
She's 23-9 in mid.
Yucky.
Over 32 games. 23-9. That is busted.
Missing Nin no longer. The ninjas are back on the Rift.
So what changed? Let's talk about that first for me schmuckle.
That E button hits real hard nowadays.
So they did buff something about her kit.
It's the when you hit E and you go in on it, it does like a bazillion damage.
approximately.
Well, it scales really well off of levels.
Yep.
So like base numbers are really high, and like base numbers are the biggest thing that people like follow from the itemization stuff at high level right now. And then uh they buffed Riftmaker to make Gwen playable, which also impacts Akali.
Probably
I'm
really
I'm a
good.
little bit conspiracy theory with the make Gwen playable line, but like they buffed Riftmaker because they made this AP Bruiser who has 0 good AP items. So like, and then surprise, surprise, the other AP no mythic champions are going to get a lot better with this. So like Katarina could also be impacted by this Nidalee. Like Riftmaker is the item of choice for this scenario now, or the default item, I should say, since just like with the tank items, you can flex to the other ones. But yeah, it's that being slightly overtuned, and then like the base damage buff was a little bit much.
So like we've got the assassins, which obviously Akali is the poster child assassin because she's been so good in every region right now, and can flex the top if you need to. All the most of the top players not a player, like she's just stupid good. You've also got the Viego, which we've talked about. You've also got the Nocturne, which we've talked about. You've got Silas, who we haven't talked as much about, but is he's in an he's been picked a lot, but only 10 and 14 across 24 games, and it it's so team comp dependent, kind of as it always has been. He's got to have good stuff to steal, or it doesn't feel as good.
Good stuff to steal and also have a role in team fights. Like it's super awkward right now to pick this champion where it's like, yes, you can steal perfect execution, which is a really strong button to have. But like that doesn't add CC to your comp. So like if you're low CC, like you don't get enough really out of it. And then like your base damage in the fights as Silas is still not that great. Like you have to rely on your healing to like get through this, and with all these like more assassin centric comps, which are going to kill your backline, it means that after the initial kill, damage numbers drop, and it makes it harder for Silas in some of these scenarios. It's very strange. Um, I don't think he's a strong answer right now with these picks. He's better in tank metas where you're taking the Ornn ult or the Sejuani ults if Sejuani makes a resurgence.
He
Thanks to
also has some
you.
not very fun lanes right now. Silas into Akali doesn't feel very good at a lot of levels.
Into Akali, and also the Akali counterpick, which we saw Perks play in NA, which is
Yeah,
LeBlanc.
speaking of assassins, we saw a LeBlanc game from Perks. I look
That
across
poor.
here. LeBlanc's got she's got 7 picks in the top 4 regions, so she's not completely out of the meta. But as I look across the stats page, there's a KDA tab here, and I'm looking like we got some 2s, some 3s, some 6s, some good things. LeBlanc's KDA across those 7 games is 17 and a half. Thanks, Perks.
Yup. Wasn't that
He
like? Didn't he clip closer? Like, who was the Rumble in that game?
it was
Jose
against
Dioto. Was that the
it was
It was
FlyQuest
Jose.
game?
Yes, that
Liga
was. Oh yeah,
Studio.
it was bad. Like
Yeah.
he
and
was.
and dreams on the Soraka, the
Yeah.
poor Soraka thing that game. He just farmed it.
Yeah.
You have to have that mentality though if you're gonna play LeBlanc. You have to just
Well,
pick on.
and like the single most legendary game Perks has ever played is Game 5 against Royal on LeBlanc. The hardest carry game I've seen in since classic Faker games. Like that's a Perks pick. We've seen it, we know it, and there it is.
And it's yet again another assassin who's really good at owning vision to set up for dragon fights. Who's also good at then fighting these melee assassins in lane. Um, isn't the best into Yasuo. So if that's a mid lane pick that starts gaining pressure, it's very awkward. Um, but like is a strong answer that's still does the same role where how you approach team fights is very set. You make sure that the enemy team's AD carry doesn't get to play League of Legends and or support in this Enchantress weird sort of return meta, and then
We're gonna get into
kill
that when
them
we
in the
talk about
jungle.
support.
Yeah,
Um,
I do want to say that I think that this is a very balanced League of Legends, in my opinion, at least at the pro level. We are seeing a lot of variations and experimentation, which I
And it's
think is very healthy. Like, and like, we all complain about like really broken metas or like very stringent, like confining, like build. I think this is really refreshing and open. Just
if
putting
you
that
take
out
a
there,
Kali out of this mid lane meta, I think it actually, I completely agree.
which
Just
you
the
can
fact
with
that
one
like
click of a button.
I'm looking through the list of mid picks, right? And you have almost every class of champion in the game represented in mid picks across the start of this split. You have ADCs. Lucian is the
Really high third.
second highest presence mid lane pick in the game right now. There's still been a little bit of mid trist out there. You have assassins, which we just talked about. You have mages, which to this point it looks like the mages are primarily certain player comfort picks. For example, BDD's Azir. No one else is playing Azir right now. BDD hard carried a game on Azir this morning. He's the only one playing it. It's got 4 picks, and I think at least 2 of them are him. Rise is only getting played by Chinese mid laners, mostly rookie. But Icon absolutely popped off in a game on Rise this morning. Like it can work. Victor, PoE loves Victor. Victor's 7-3 in 10 games. Syndra has looked really bad, and yet I've seen at least one hard carry Syndra game. So like the mages are all still kind of there. That's not even hitting Orianna, TF, and Zoe, all of whom are higher presence than the more individual picks. So like mages are still playable. The
And
tanks are still playable.
and when people figure out that Galio can stop mage assassins, he might come back into play, but we'll see.
Already happened in
People
a
like him,
couple of games.
and people like him better in support because
Yep.
he's a flex too.
Yeah. Well, to me, that speaks to like play your game. And that is very healthy meta. That is very healthy. Like, oh, you can have your play style, you can play to it and perfect it, and you can win games because you've opted into doing that, and rather play instead of like being bound to like, oh, Rito made game this way, me play this way now.
But then the
Then
last class
Akali.
that's been played mid lane that we haven't talked about yet, which is where we transition to bot lane, is enchanters. Because we've gone all this time and we have not talked about the overall third most banned champion, which is Karma. And the Karma and Lulu mid lane games that have appeared. Karma, along with Set, has been played in 4 different roles, technically, this split, because she's been played in Senna lanes. She's been played a lot in support. And there have been some Kog'Maw things starting to happen, and some Jinx things starting to happen, and some like the enchanters in the mid lane and the top lane and the bot lane. Because we've seen Karma games as we look at support, we've seen Seraphine games. We saw a Soraka game, not very good, but the it's not all the way there yet because Karma's the highest presence, but Leona, Thresh, and Nautilus are still the most picked. So we're not all the way in the danger zone yet of Ardent Sensor meta. But Karma being this high priority is it just Karma or are enchanters somewhere around here?
Well, so there's a couple of things that led to this enchanter boom, so to speak. One of which is they had to hotfix out Hex Flash after there was a long pause and then a bug found in an LPL game, which I was watching live. That was really fun.
And people are still picking the Hex Flash champions even without Hex Flash, but it's less good.
Yeah, because you can't force the all-in level 2 and then call your jungle bot down.
Yep.
And without that like ability to just like force sums on level 2 and then get a winning lane position because they have to play like cowards, it's a lot harder to win these or deal with the enchanters. The other thing is that the way Shirelia's works right now, it's not even a heal bot, it's a move speed bot. Whereas Karma, you can like give a massive amount of move speed and mobility to these AD carries and then get them around the map. Same thing with Lulu, where you build Shirelias, so that your team can run really fast to drag into 5v5 or run really fast away from Viego. And that's kind of the the actual way it's playing out right now.
To be
Is
clear, the top lane Karma is building Shurelya's too most of
yeah,
the time. Like it's
it's all
Shurelya's no
lanes.
matter where it's going.
Yeah, and like TF has been building Shurelya's in mid lane, like even at MSI. Like this is the way that people are building right now because the move speed team wide buff is very powerful and gives you a lot of ability, especially to outplay these high skill execution champions. Because so much of the game is about hands right now. When we talk about what Steven was saying with play what you're good at and stick with your comfort picks. Well, that turns into execution games. And your team having 25% higher move speed than the opponent is very good for out executing. Um, I think some of these enchanters are going to die off, especially as Raito fixes their spaghetti code. But one that might stick around is Lulu specifically as an answer to this assassin meta because it's really easy to press W on Viego or on Akali when they pop out and or Galio taunt or Akali, but like Lulu specifically where you can uh,
Say no.
whimsy the enemy champion and turn them into a cupcake. Like turning an assassin into a cupcake is a really good way to deal with this meta. Um, so I expect Lulu to continue like super high presence as well.
Well,
Um,
and that's when you start to look at the bot lane picks, right? You have the Ezreal problem, where like I said in this chat a couple weeks ago, they just need to delete Ezreal from the game because we can't keep having this happen. Every single time he finds a build that's just broken on him, and it's disgusting. I hate this Divine Sunderer build. So the question is, if and when Sunderer gets nerfed, does that take Ezreal out of the meta because it takes his favorite item out? I don't think so,
no,
but he is by far the most picked thing. Him and Kaisa. Ezreal has been the more successful of the two. Varus has been the most banned because there's good stuff going on. After those top three, there are 6 different ADCs that have double-digit picks across the major regions, and well, one of them is Tom Kench, so 5. Because Senna things. Um, Digit picks, so we'll call her the 6th one. But the presence of Jinx and Kog'Maw among those 6 is, I think, notable for some of the things that are happening here. My favorite game of the recent weeks, which I mentioned and wanted to make sure people noted, we had a couple of massive 50-minute slugfests in NA, including one that made Steven very sad. But if you want to watch a really fun one that involves a Turbo Kog'Maw, game 1 of Hanwha Life Esports against Gen G was a spectacular game of League of Legends that featured a Kog'Maw Caitlyn matchup in the bottom lane.
Vintage.
It was a very fun game to watch and featured a massive comeback by the Kog'Maw team when there was a Kog'Maw with 6 items with a Lulu on its team. Um, it playing into assassins. Like that was the thing, is it was a fascinating game in terms of the team comps and how stuff was functioning. Very much worth your time to watch. It was an awesome game to watch. Game 2 is a slump. Don't watch game 2. Um, but you have Cog and Jinx here, and then you still have Trist and Jin and Callista and Senna running around. Senna, who I think has like almost a 70% win rate across 16 games so far. Still pretty freaking good. Still pretty oppressive in lane, and everybody, all these supports love playing Tom Kench and getting all that farm. So, like, are there any ADCs that are sticking out to you that you got the big 3, but are any of these other ones going to start to accelerate more? Are we going to see more Kog'Maws come out? What do you
Yes.
think, Eric?
Oh.
well, I'd focus more on the fact that I think that Jinx as well as Tristana are going to drop off a lot. For starters, they nerfed Jinx's abilities to steal dragons, which was one of the passion projects. But also, they're really bad into Xin Zhao. And like, especially in these leagues that have huge Xin priority, like I don't see those champions sticking around as well because of like those matchups. But like I do think that Senna's super oppressive with this meta with all these assassins, with mainly with the snare. Also another champion that's really good with Divine Sunderer. So like Senna is gonna stick around. Ezreal could stick around for a while because ADCs that you can build Frozen Heart on into Viego are very strong. Um, and so I expect that those two are going to stick in the meta, especially because they're the ones that feel the best as an ADC in solo queue to play against a team full of assassins. Like, I don't want to play some squish champ into like Viego and LeBlanc in solo queue. I want to play something where I can run away and then flame my team when they die to Viego in solo queue. So I expect those two to like maintain priority by tilt factor, if not actual gameplay.
Or everybody could just keep picking Kai'Sa.
Yeah.
I don't like Kai'Sa. I said it.
It doesn't look as just like the others. It doesn't look quite as good into these like death ball comps. Like it goes great with the death ball comps, but it's like kind of like the thing with the Ezreal with the Frozen Heart. You don't want to ult that as Kai'Sa. Like you're gonna ult this Ezreal, you're gonna hit a 40% attack speed nerf, and then the Viego's gonna kill you. And it's like what's fun about that experience? There's
Like,
nothing fun about that experience.
the memes at MSI about Kai'Sa's position on a tier list were plentiful, but it is notable that of all of the ADCs, that have like 12 or more picks, the only one, no, not even the only one, she has the worst win rate of all of them with the second biggest sample size. 40% win rate across 50 games. It's not working, so I think that people are going to start trying stuff to figure out what else can work.
Kog'Maw,
Whether
Kog'Maw,
that is,
Kog'Maw, Kog'Maw.
whether, like, Steven, you think the cog's going to be a big factor in this?
Yes, for the main reason being you play with a Kog'Maw one way, and that is protect Kog'Maw and scale. If you're playing a different way, you're not doing it correctly. And that works really well into assassin meta because you deal with an assassin one way. You kill them before you kill or you get killed. So that is two like very binary things. Like you're playing Kog'Maw, keep Kog'Maw alive. He spits on things. So if you're keeping him alive, you're not letting him die. It's when you're getting to a high level and in a team fight, team comp genre of League of Legends, Kog'Maw is your best option to execute consistently on. And
And,
so
like,
people are going to gravitate to that.
if you don't know how Turbo Cog works, watch Genji HLE Game 1. Watch Ruler play Kog'Maw. Like, you have to position different, you have to think differently in team fights late game. It is so different from so many different things you play, and it's not a thing that's been at the highest levels of league since like whenever was Ardent Meta season 5. Like, it's been a
Yeah.
long time since we've gotten to see the best ADCs in the world play Kog'Maw at the highest level, and it's not like other stuff. It's such a
But you
fun
can only
champion
play
to
it
watch play
one
well.
way.
Yep.
Well, there is a lot of skill expression with it though, and
Yep.
it specifically is really strong with these move speed champions, right? Where with the Shurelias, because while it does play out where it's you're peeling, they call it in the casting desk on the cast like protect the president, right? Where it's like, you're the Secret Service, you're protecting the president, you keep that Kog'Maw alive no matter what. But the real way you're supposed to actually play this comp, if you're good, is the Kog'Maw kind of actually goes in front. And so positioning in these fights is very unique because you want the Kog'Maw towards the front of the fight so you can effectively poke with your W active and rain death on the enemy team or like zone them out and bait them into trying to all in. At which point you pop your Shurelias, you pop your massive shield, you turn them into a cupcake, and then you run the hell away, and then you have a 4v5 advantage. And that's kind of like the way these fights play out, where it's the Kog'Maw is like bait, and then you
Like a worm
get
on
the
a
kill,
hook.
like a void puppy on a hook. Yes. And so it is really powerful. I'm curious to see if teams like start just banning out the stuff that makes Kog'Maw good rather than banning Kog'Maw, where you
Yes.
can
Like
ban the Lulu.
we see Karma so high on ban lists already, so there's some of that going on as it is.
But you have to go pretty deep. So you have to get Karma, Lulu, and then is Tom Kent
I
still? I think,
would add Seraphine before
and
I would add Tom
Seraphine.
Kench.
Well, okay,
Like
so now we're still pretty deep in the ban list if you're
Yeah.
really worried about that Kog'Maw, and
like
really only one of those is worth banning
you don't,
besides the Kog'Maw.
we wouldn't think that Cog is good enough for the enchanters to go deeper than that. Like, because there's plenty of enchanters, right? You could go Nami, you could go Sona, you could go Seraphine, which, like, we haven't seen Nami and Sona at all, but, like, Nami's great for your move speed. That's a champion that you could see paired with it, but boy, is that lane gonna get camped to hell and back.
And it's really hard to stop assassins with Nami. Like,
Gotta have some sick bubbles.
Which is doable at
you
the
have
highest
to be
level,
playing like
but
6D chess to hit a bubble on a LeBlanc
Akali,
or
yeah,
a
hit a
Kali.
bubble on a somersaulting Akali that's invisible in a smoke screen. Yeah.
Yikers.
it's yeah. So
When
like
does
you can
rework
go,
Tom Kench get into this?
It'll
it
be a
probably
while.
won't.
It'll be a while,
It's not
so
gonna hit
yeah.
pro
So
before
you
we
have
have
to go
another
so
episode or two.
deep before Kog'Maw is not like really easy to protect.
Because yeah, like the Kench rework is gonna be very interesting to see because Senna is really reliant on having Kench, and that might be depending on how the Kench rework goes, it might be part of getting rid of Senna is getting rid of the security blanket of playing Kench. But like Kench is getting played with Varus too. It's not just Senna.
No.
Eric, do you have any thoughts about support champions? I know the Hex Flash change is an interesting piece of this because that hits Set really hard too in all of his roles.
Explain
We talked about
the change just for the
uh,
But
schmucks
like
like
any
me.
other
it,
champions you had
it's
any
not a
thoughts about?
change. It just got hot fixed out of the
hot
game.
fix, the you're not allowed to pick it because
Yeah,
it's broken.
it's busted.
Oh,
Yeah,
spaghetti
Like
code.
it
Okay,
broke
thank
a
you.
actually
game.
broken.
Oh, okay.
They had to remake an LPL,
Yeah.
like full remake because of Hex Flash just like busting on like some Leona gank, and yeah, so
Sad.
Any other champions in the whole wide game we haven't talked about yet that you'd like
well,
to?
I think all of them are playable right now. You can do whatever you want, maybe not Malphite.
Now,
But
before
I feel
we're not going to talk
attacked.
about this week. When New Mundo hits, I'm interested to see if New Mundo makes any friends among us. It doesn't feel like a very good meta for him right now, but new him might feel differently. Pretty sure he's still a juggernaut though.
well, if it's four assassins and an Ezreal, Mundo seems great into that. And so like and Senna is not actually great against Mundo. So like there are comps that people could put together, which would be bad against Mundo. There are other comps that are fantastic against Mundo. So it really depends. Kog'Maw. So like it really depends on like how teams build comps and then like what the picks look like in an individual game lobby.
The other issue with this, I think, for Mundo is if we talked about the split push items that are coming in at the same time as the Mundo rework. If you pick a heavy, hard split pusher into Mundo that can percent health him to death, that feels like it might be problematic for him, like Camille, like Fiora, both of whom are going to be very, very happy with this new split pushing item.
Oh, or honestly, even Gwen and Viego are both
Yep.
like also in that camp. So
So that is almost more the concern than the team comps is if indeed split push is going to come back and be a thing, it's going to do very interesting things to the top lane champion pool, and it still probably won't be great for Mundo. But I want to see new Mundo in a game. We need corporate Mundo on the big stage.
Absolutely. Well, how are they going to get the big banks? No one's playing the new character to get the money.
We'll do a couple of other assorted questions now that we've gone through all of the champions forever. One of the things I wanted to do is most improved player that you've seen thus far in the summer split, or who has looked better than you thought they would so far? Who has changed your expectations, shall I say? So, Eric, would you like to go first with this while I let
Well,
Steven think?
look better than I thought they would is definitely Vethio and EU on Misfits, who are 3-0 after 1 week. They had a really good win against Vitality and another couple of also strong performances. I expected Razork to look good. I expected Hirit to be decent, uh, and for Vander and Kave to be doing all right. Vethio looks a lot better than last split, which is part of its meta, but like that's a huge upside for a team that didn't mess up their roster in the offseason in EU. Puts them in a very strong spot. Um, Also, Huni in NA. I think Huni on TSM has looked like their best player, which is like terrifying. Um,
Yes.
like
Um, I hinted at both of these earlier in the podcast, but I will do one each from Korea and China. I think Peanut has started to look like himself again early in this split. Nongshim are the surprise 3-0 team in the LCK with 3-2-1 wins, admittedly over probably the three worst teams in the league. So I'm interested to see how they go when they start to face harder teams, but he has been critical to their wins and their best performances. And he and their new rookie mid laner, who was a former SKT trainee, have both had some outstanding performances in starting the season off 3-0, which for a Nongshim team that is not typically something we think of as a playoff threat, a very nice thing to see. And it's nice to see Peanut looking back on form because he's a great player of years past, and so that's good to see. And in the LPL, I want to shout out Icon on LNG, who we talked about earlier, who has had some very impressive performances working with Tarzan in LNG, who I believe also are 3-0 to start the season, and somewhat of a surprise, and they have played good teams. So Icon had a massive rise performance to finish off the series against JDG, had the big Yasuo game that we talked about earlier, and has looked great, which for a player that hasn't really been much to write home about in his time in the LPL with some years on OMG and other things is an interesting development in an LNG team that wants to push higher than 10th place this split. Steven, who has impressed you so far that you didn't expect?
So I think 100 Thieves in general has,
The whole team.
yeah, like I will give credit to Abadage. I've mentioned it before. I'm not a huge fan of EU imports showing up in North America and not performing. It seems to be a common thread. I think he has had the best showing in the first few games of any EU import to North America, statistically. And I think whatever that has done, like someday has looked really well. I think he has only had like the Immortals loss seems like a weird one, without watching that game per se, but like we kind of called out that was going to be like a spicy team, and they're showing it. Like they did it, and that I think is very impressive because I feel like that was a team that could have just like not worked. Like it could have, it as much as it's doing well within the first few showings here, it could have just been just loss after loss and not synergizing and not incorporating a new player.
All right. We had a couple other questions to hit. We talked about assassins. We talked about jungle comps. What is the best Kog'Maw skin?
Pugma.
That'll be the B. Like BMaw is great, especially with the blue chroma. Like the blue B, it's very like visual on the Rift. It might be kind of pay to lose, but oh my gosh, fantastic.
Um, how hipster am I gonna go here?
Like
Caterpillar's OP.
I think actually my favorite visually is the one that I'm never going to have, which is Hextech Kog'Maw. I love the visuals of that skin, but it is not what I will spend my 10 gemstones on if I ever actually get to 10 gemstones. And I also think that Arcanist Kog'Maw is really underrated because that skin is really fun.
It's also one of the highest pay to lose skins in the game, which is very unfortunate.
Yeah.
It is like it perfectly outlines all of his hitboxes for the enemy as you're using the abilities. So it's like, all right, I can just dodge this.
Is Firecracker Kog'Maw still louder than all the other skins?
Yes.
Okay, then
Lion
that's
Dance,
also
loudest?
Lion Dance is so loud.
Like Line Dance is very loud. And Butterfly is majestic. That's like Reindeer also has a sweet space in my heart because like he has the giant nose. Like watching him walk around with the big red nose walking around a lane, also fantastic.
Now, which Kog'Maw skin do you actually play when you play Kog'Maw?
I don't know
Because
if
I
I
play
have a
Battlecast.
skin.
I play Battlecast.
I play Butterfly.
I do have Battlecast. Battlecast is very nice. He is
I
a
don't like
robot.
I like the effects on Battlecast a lot.
Like I like making the Void Puppy cuter when playing skins on him, not like more monstrous. So I go with a Butterfly.
And you're the reason that we don't have any monster characters. Thank you, Eric.
Hey, they could make a monster character and then make them a Space Groove skin, and I'd just always play the Space Groove skin. Like that's just a way for them to make more money. I don't understand the problem. Like I play a lot of Urgot, Steven. You know what skin I roll on Urgot? Pajama Guardian cosplay Urgot.
I don't know why I even hesitated in that answer.
Oh man. All right, boys. Last thing, as usual, what you been playing? Eric, go first.
What have I been playing? A lot of Nexus Blitz while that was a thing. And then I was alternating picks in that. But like mainly Teemo. I've been rocking that Teemo train. It's very tilting when my opponents are well equipped to deal with Teemo, aka they know to actually swap to the ward clear trinkets on Nexus Blitz, like some kind of haters. Yeah.
Yeah, I gave the Teemo a spin on the Nexus Blitz too. I had a little bit of fun with it. Was an enjoyable time. I tried to get the Nico rolling on Nexus Blitz, and people flamed me for playing 80 Nico, but it's actually pretty decent right now. It is the on-hit Nico build is better than you would think it is, and it might be better in real games than it was in Nexus Blitz, with more time to scale and more time to play top lane and annoy not ranged top laners with it. So I might try to bring some more Nico to my normals and see what's cooking with that, because I do like playing on hit Nico a lot. I think it's a pretty fun build and uses her passive well if you can get the 3 hits going well and get some dirty stuff going with that. It's an enjoyable time. Steven, what you got?
I've been playing Pokemon Blue in a series.
Is
We're
that
doing
a
another.
plug I hear?
I hear a plug. I think I'll even put like an annotation to click where you can go check out that playlist. We're
What a
also
segue.
we play we actually play video games on this channel besides just talk about video games, so you should check that out. That's been a really fun start as we are going down our poser series, where I learn about the video games that I didn't actually play through all the way, even though I call myself a gamer, and I will emerge a non-poser from the video games. Eric is also showing me about Donkey Kong Country, which is a great game that we're playing through that you can also check out. Plug! It's there for you to check out and watch.
Steven, do you have anything else that you could possibly plug for us?
I don't know.
Like some merch, perhaps?
We might have shirts that you can buy at the Funky store that really supports the channel, so we can play more video games, because video games cost money. But we sure like to play them so you can watch them and laugh, and we have fun. You have fun. You should show it by wearing some cool shirts like this. This is the
Speaking of which, Speaking of merch, you two are both disgusting Team Liquid shills.
What?
They have this
What?
Naruto collection. Like, look at this. How could I not?
You can't buy it
like,
now.
How can I not like? And also, this is like an
Oh,
anti-Liquid hat. It's like I'm a missing nin from the Liquid Village, right? Like, I've already betrayed them enough.
I do question
Forever Fourth, like hashtag.
My marketing brain says why. but you did pay for it, so
here's the thing. What you need to understand about the Team Liquid and Naruto crossover collection is there are lots and lots of people on the internet just like Eric who are about 30-year-old weebs who watched lots and lots of Naruto and now work in well-paying jobs that have disposable income.
they're watching the
Eric
manga.
is the target esports demographic. Mostly because you might actually have disposable income. Possibly.
What even is disposable income?
Yeah, Eric has swag. We have kids, Steven. That's the difference.
How could this have happened?
Smart planning.
Where has all my money gone? Oh wait, I have a child. A human child.
Oh man.
If you want Naruto swag for your kid, just let me know.
I absolutely don't. We don't
Okay.
we don't do Naruto in this house, my friend. You know that.
Not yet.
All right.
I'm disgusted by you, as I always have been. Anyway, this has been reaction time. We'll be back in a couple of weeks to see how wrong we were about all of our takes, as we usually are. Steven's there, Eric's there, wherever they actually are on your screen. We'll figure it out. Buy merch, Funky Store. Watch our stuff on the channel. Check the plugs. Click the links. Follow us on the socials. Hit us with comments and questions. You know what to do. We'll see you next time.